In November 1945, a 74-year-old man led a group of hunters deep into Vermont's Green Mountains and vanished without a trace. No scream, no struggle, just gone. But this wasn't a simple missing persons case. He was only steps ahead of the group. They saw him, then they didn't. And his disappearance was only the first in what would become one of America's most haunted mysteries, the Bennington Triangle. It was the day after Thanksgiving, 1945. The morning frost still clung to the trees in Glastory, Vermont, a half-forgotten town swallowed by the mountains. Most people had moved out decades ago. The logging industry collapsed, and with it, the town. But the land remained. Wild, untamed, and strange. Mid-Eye Rivers was 74, but still moved like a man half his age. He'd lived in these hills his entire life. Locals called him the walking map. If anyone could guide a group of hunters safely in and out of the wilderness, it was him. There were 4 others in the hunting party that day. They set out early, heading along the long trail, a narrow path that cut deep into the thick forest. Rivers took the lead. He was chatting, moving confidently, always a few paces ahead. The others kept up easily, laughing, pointing out old cabins and animal tracks. Nothing felt wrong. Until it did. They were maybe a mile or 2 from the trailhead, approaching a stream that curved sharply between 2 ridges. The group stopped to tie their boots and drink from canteens. Mid-Eye kept walking. "We'll catch up," one of the hunters shouted. Mid-Eye raised his hand, a casual wave over his shoulder, and disappeared around the bend. The hunters finished their break and rounded the same corner. "No Mid-Eye," they called out. Silence. They kept walking, expecting to see him just up ahead. He wasn't there. The trail forked into 2, both muddy, covered in thick leaves and pine needles. No footprints. No sign of him. Just gone. At first, they thought he just wandered a bit off trail. Maybe to look for deer or scout a better path. But by sundown, there was still no sign of him. No tracks. No response to shouting. No movement in the woods. The hunters returned to town and reported him missing. The next morning, more than 80 people joined the search. Locals, police, firemen, even U.S. Army soldiers from Fort Devens. They combed the woods grid by grid. Dogs were brought in. Planes flew overhead. Nothing. The only clue? A single rifle cartridge was found near the stream where he was last seen. Investigators guessed he may have dropped it while loading his rifle. But there was no sign of a struggle, animal attack, or injury. Just that one bullet. Some searchers began refusing to enter the woods alone. "Something's wrong up there," one was quoted saying in the Bennington Banner. "It's like the forest swallows you." After 8 days, the search was called off. No body. No clothing. Not even a scrap of fabric. Mid-Eye Rivers had simply vanished. Back in town, people whispered. About the cursed land of Glastory. About Ugly Mountain where compasses spun, where hunters said the wind carried voices. Old-timers said Glastory had always been wrong. Native Abenaki legends warned of an evil energy in the hills, a place the animals wouldn't go. A place humans weren't meant to tread. And now they said it had taken one of their own. But the horror had only just begun. Because 1 year later, another person vanished. And then another. And another. Between 1945 and 1950, 5 people disappeared in a 10-mile radius near Glastory Mountain, most while hiking the long trail. All under strange circumstances. All without a trace. One moment they were walking with friends. The next, gone. 1946, Paula Weldon, 18, a college student, seen walking alone into the forest. Hundreds searched. She never came out. 1949, James Tetford vanished from a moving bus. He was last seen sitting in his seat. When the bus reached its destination, he was gone. His luggage was still on board. 1950, Paul Jepson, 8 years old. His mother turned her back for minutes. He vanished from an empty truck. 1950, Frida Langer, the only one whose body was found. But not until months later, in a field that had been searched dozens of times before. No cause of death could be determined. It was as if the forest gave her back, but never told them why. Fast forward to today, 2025. Mid-Eye Rivers' great-grandson, Tyler Rivers, is a Vermont-based photographer and amateur investigator. He grew up hearing stories of the triangle of his great-grandfather's final steps. Last fall, he decided to retrace Middy's route. For a documentary, he brought a camera, GPS trail map, drone, and for the first half of the hike, everything went fine. Until he reached the exact same spot, the sharp bend near the stream. That's when his GoPro glitched. The footage froze despite a full battery and no damage. His compass began spinning. And in the audio when reviewed later, there's a faint sound. Like whispering. Multiple voices. Saying his name. Tyler's footage, including the malfunction, has over 3 million views on TikTok. The last line he says in the clip? "I swear, I felt someone right behind me. But when I turned around, no one was there." The Bennington Triangle isn't marked on any map. But hikers still go there. Some for the thrill. Some to disprove the legend. Some don't come back. Park rangers refuse to talk about the disappearances. One anonymously told a local journalist, "You don't go off trail. Not up there. People think it's just wilderness, but it's not. It's watching you." There's no cell service on most of the long trail. The forest is dense, quiet, deceptive. And even today, the question remains. What happened to Mid-Eye Rivers? An accident? An animal attack? Or something far stranger? Because 5 disappearances in 5 years, all in the same area, all without evidence, isn't just chance. It's a pattern. And patterns mean purpose. You think the first disappearance was strange? Wait until you hear what happened to Paula Weldon, an 18-year-old college student who walked into the forest one afternoon and was never seen again. But here's the twist: a man may have followed her. And he may know what happened, but no one could ever prove it. She was 18. Smart. Adventurous. A college student walking off finals week stress. She put on a bright red jacket and told her roommate she'd be back by dark. But she never came back. And no one ever saw her again. Her name was Paula Weldon. And what happened to her in the woods of Vermont still haunts the region 80 years later. Because she didn't just vanish, she left behind a trail of clues and a suspect no one could touch. It was December 1st, 1946, a cold but clear Sunday in Bennington, Vermont. On the campus of Bennington College, students were winding down the weekend. Finals were approaching. Stress was high. Paula Jean Weldon, a second-year student, told her roommate she was going for a walk. She didn't take a purse. No overnight bag. Just a few dollars, a notebook, and a paperback mystery novel in her coat pocket. Her red parka stood out against the gray sky. Locals would later say that coat should have been easy to spot. She left campus around 2:45 p.m., hitchhiked with a local contractor named Louis Knapp, and told him she was heading toward the long trail near Glastory Mountain. He dropped her off near the trailhead. That was the last time anyone safely confirmed seeing her alive. Several hikers later told police they'd seen a girl matching Paula's description on the trail around 4 p.m. She was walking quickly, head down, alone. At one point, she stopped to ask an older couple if she was on the right path to the summit. They said yes. She smiled, thanked them, and continued. A few minutes later, the couple rounded a bend and Paula was gone. Just like Mid-Eye Rivers the year before. They thought maybe she'd turned off onto a side path or taken a break. But when she didn't return by dark and didn't show up for class the next day, concern turned into panic. By Monday afternoon, the entire region was buzzing. Paula was a college student, educated, responsible, and not known for reckless behavior. Her professors insisted this wasn't a runaway case. Her father, William Archibald Weldon, arrived from Connecticut within hours. A man of wealth and influence, he immediately demanded answers and action. But Vermont didn't have a state police force at the time. The investigation was clumsy. Local police didn't secure the trailhead. Evidence wasn't logged properly. Hikers who may have seen Paula weren't interviewed until days later. No dogs were brought in until 48 hours had passed. By then, the trail had gone cold. Paula's bright red parka became a symbol of her disappearance. Searchers believed it would stand out in the forest. But no scraps of red fabric were ever found. Not even a button. This led some to believe she'd been taken either off the trail by someone she encountered or somewhere before she ever reached the woods. One theory? That she never made it to the trail at all. That someone posing as a hiker or a helpful local intercepted her between the road and the forest. A few hundred yards. That's all it would take. Her father became convinced someone was following her. A new figure entered the story. A man named Fred Gadet. He was a local laborer in his 30s who lived near the trail. Several witnesses said he was working on his property the day Paula vanished. But rumors spread that he'd left suddenly for a walk at the same time she passed through. Some said he had a history of violence. That he'd made offhand comments about knowing what happened to the girl in the red coat. When questioned by police, he gave multiple conflicting statements about where he was that day. First, he said he was home. Then he said he saw her walk past. Then he claimed he followed her just to see where she was going. He was interrogated several times but never arrested. There was no physical evidence tying him to the case. And no body. When campus staff entered Paula's dorm room, nothing looked unusual. Her textbooks were neatly arranged. The bed was made. A drawing she'd been working on was half finished on her desk. But there was one odd detail. Her journal was open to a page that read, "I don't feel like myself lately. I don't feel real." That single sentence fueled dozens of theories. Depression. Dissociation. Could she have run off? Or hurt herself? But those who knew her said no. She'd made plans for the following week. She had tickets to a school play. She was excited about winter break. Her roommate swore she was fine. A little stressed, but nothing dark. Paula's father became obsessed. He hired private detectives. Offered rewards. Tracked down dozens of leads, most dead ends. He even accused Bennington College of covering up the truth to protect their reputation. And while some supported him, others said he became erratic, distrustful of police, even paranoid. But who could blame him? His daughter vanished in broad daylight in public, and the system had no answers. In his final interviews years later, he said, "The forest took her. I don't know how. I don't know why. But something out there knows." With two people now gone, both on the same trail, both vanishing without a trace, locals began whispering again. The old legends came back. That the Abenaki tribes called the mountain cursed. That Glastonbury was a crossroads, a thin place between worlds. Hunters stopped going out alone. Some said they heard voices in the woods, others reported strange lights. Equipment failing. The sound of footsteps behind them with no one there. And beneath it all, a slow realization began to spread. This wasn't random. There was a pattern, a growing rhythm of vanishing. And it wasn't over. In the years that followed, dozens claimed to see Paula's spirit. A woman in a red coat seen walking silently through the trees. Hikers finding tiny footprints in fresh snow that stopped abruptly mid-step. A young girl matching her description spotted standing motionless near a trail fork, then gone when approached. No photo of Paula was ever confirmed in the wild. But hikers still report a presence on that part of the long trail. A strange cold. A whisper. A red blur in the trees. Paula Weldon was never found. No remains. No clues. No final message. Her case was officially closed in 1952 due to lack of evidence. But unofficially, it remains one of Vermont's deepest and darkest mysteries. A missing girl in a red coat. A trail that hides its dead. And a mountain that doesn't give back what it takes. In 1949, a man boarded a bus full of passengers and sat quietly in his seat. When the bus reached its final stop, he was gone, completely vanished between two small towns. No one saw him leave. But his luggage was still there. His ticket used. His name was James Tedford. And his disappearance makes the Triangle's curse feel undeniable. Imagine this. A man boards a crowded bus, ticket in hand. He sits quietly. Other passengers remember seeing him as late as the last stop. But when the bus reaches its destination, he's gone. His luggage is still on board. His seat is empty. He didn't get off. He just vanished. This is the story of James Edward Tedford, and it's one of the most baffling disappearances in American history, made even more chilling by where it happened, the heart of the Bennington Triangle. November 12, 1949. James Tedford, a 68-year-old veteran and resident of the Bennington Soldiers' Home, was returning from a trip to St. Albans where he'd visited family. He boarded a local bus in the late afternoon. It was a long ride, about 130 miles, and made several stops along the way. It wasn't empty. Witnesses say the bus was fairly full and James had a seat near the middle. He was last seen reading a timetable, staring out the window as the hills rolled by. But when the bus pulled into Bennington that evening, he wasn't there. Here's where it gets weird. When the bus arrived at its final stop in Bennington, the driver did the usual sweep. Several passengers had disembarked at earlier stops, but none recalled seeing Tedford leave. His luggage was still stowed in the rack above his seat. His bus ticket was still in his pocket. But James was gone. No one noticed him move. No one remembered him standing up. There were no unscheduled stops. And the driver swore, "If he got off, I would have seen it." But the seat was empty. Police were immediately contacted. They interviewed every passenger on the bus. At least 14 confirmed James was on board when the bus left St. Albans. Several said he was still sitting in his seat at the last stop before Bennington, just 15 minutes out. He was quiet, calm, looking out the window. Then, nothing. The bus never stopped between that town and Bennington. The doors never opened. It didn't break down. The route was uninterrupted. And yet, James was no longer on board. The authorities searched every possible explanation. Did he fall asleep and get off unnoticed? Unlikely. Everyone swore his seat was empty at arrival. Could he have fallen from the bus? But the doors were closed and the window sealed. Suicide? No signs, and the terrain wouldn't have allowed a safe or unnoticed jump. Foul play? No one on board reported anything suspicious. And why would someone remove an elderly man without anyone noticing and without a struggle? Eventually, they had to admit the impossible. James Thetford disappeared while riding a moving bus. By now, locals were whispering again, because this wasn't the first strange disappearance in the region. 1945, Mid-Eye Rivers gone while walking just ahead of a hunting group. 1946, Paula Weldon vanished mid-hike on the long trail. And now 1949, James Thetford gone from a bus seat. All within a 20-mile radius. All between Bennington and Glastonbury. All without a trace. It was as if something in the area was collecting people regardless of where they were. Even inside a moving vehicle. James lived a quiet life at the Soldiers' Home, a place for aging war veterans. By all accounts, he was kind but distant. No enemies. No debts. No reason to run. He had made the trip to St. Albans to visit a niece. She confirmed he was in good spirits, had plans for Christmas, and promised to write her soon. His fellow residents were stunned. He had no history of mental illness. No injuries. He was active in community events. And now he was gone. Even his bed was still made. His reading glasses left by the nightstand. One passenger, an older woman named Ruth L. Carter, claimed something odd happened near the end of the ride. She said that around 20 minutes before arriving in Bennington, the lights inside the bus flickered. Just once. Not a big deal, she assumed it was a wiring issue. But when she glanced up, she thought James had turned around to look at her as if he'd heard something. His face was pale. She looked away for a second. When she looked back, he was gone. The bus didn't stop. She was so disturbed by this, she refused to take public transportation ever again. This is where theory starts to drown out logic. Some claimed James was taken by whatever force haunts the Bennington Triangle, that he simply phased out of reality. Others said the area was a window, a place where dimensions overlap and people fall between the cracks. A few religious locals whispered darker things. That the mountain demanded yearly sacrifices and James was simply the next one chosen. Whatever the truth, no body was found. No answers were ever given. He was officially declared missing. Unresolved. In the years that followed, bus drivers began refusing to stop in certain parts of the Bennington route after dark. One even reported seeing a man in a wool coat standing on the side of the road in the forest waving, but when he stopped, no one was there. Another claimed a passenger disappeared mid-route, only for them to be found asleep in their room the next morning with no memory of the ride. Is it mass hysteria? Hallucination? Folklore feeding into itself? Maybe. But here's what we know. James Edward Thetford boarded a bus and was never seen again. Today, people leave memorial notes on bus stop number 17, the last confirmed stop where James was seen. They write things like, "Where did you go, Mr. Thetford? I looked for you. I swear I did. I don't ride the bus anymore." There's even a rumor that if you sit in his seat, alone, on a night ride through the mountain, you'll feel a cold breeze behind you. And sometimes passengers report seeing a man at the back of the bus. Gray coat. Quiet. And when they blink, he's gone. If James Thetford's case shook the town, what happened the next year shattered it completely. An 8-year-old boy named Paul Jepson vanished from an idling truck while his mother was only feet away. She turned around for 5 minutes. He was gone. The search brought bloodhounds, police, locals. But what the dogs did next made everyone stop talking. Because they tracked Paul's scent straight up Glastonbury Mountain and then it just stopped. Like the air itself had erased him. An 8-year-old boy is left in a truck for just a few minutes. His mother turns around, he's gone. No scream. No sign of a struggle. Bloodhounds track his scent deep into the woods, but the trail ends suddenly in the middle of the forest. As if the ground just opened up and swallowed him whole. This is the story of Paul Jepson, the youngest victim of the Bennington Triangle and possibly its most chilling. October 12, 1950, a gray, chilly Thursday in Bennington, Vermont. Paul Jepson, age 8, had the day off from school. His mother worked as an animal caretaker at the local Bennington town dump and decided to bring Paul along for the ride. He loved the outdoors. Bright, curious, always asking questions about birds and trees. His mother later described him as restless but never reckless. Around 1 p.m., they pulled up to the dump. She parked the truck, left the door open, and told Paul to sit tight for just a few minutes while she fed the pigs. He nodded, watching the trees sway in the wind. It was the last time she ever saw him. His mother was away for no more than 10 minutes. When she returned, the truck door was still open. But Paul was gone. At first, she thought he'd wandered into the woods nearby. She called out, expecting him to pop out laughing, maybe chasing a squirrel or throwing rocks. But he didn't answer. And as the minutes passed, panic set in. She ran in widening circles, screamed his name, checked the nearby road, checked under the truck. Nothing. By 2 p.m., the police were contacted. The search began immediately. Bennington police, dozens of volunteers, and bloodhounds fanned out across the area. Locals brought lanterns and rifles. It got cold fast that evening. Searchers scoured the woods, creeks, and drainage ditches. But it was the dogs that turned the search truly strange. They picked up Paul's scent at the truck, clear and strong, and followed it through the underbrush up a lightly wooded hill that led into Glastory Forest. The scent trail ran straight for almost a mile. And then it stopped. There was no stream to cross, no cliff, no ravine, no sign of a vehicle. Just a dense patch of forest where the dogs circled in confusion, noses high, whimpering. The trail simply vanished, like the boy had been lifted straight into the sky. The handler was baffled. He'd worked on over 200 missing persons cases and never seen a scent disappear so completely. Locals started whispering again. They'd heard of this happening before. 3 other people gone in the last 5 years, and every time, the trail led toward Glastory Mountain. Just like Paula Weldon, Paul had been wearing a bright red jacket. Searchers said it should have stood out anywhere in the forest, even from the air. Planes were dispatched. Nothing. No jacket, no shoe, no scrap of fabric. The forest was silent, and something about that silence began to gnaw at the searchers. It didn't feel like nature. It felt intentional. In the days after the disappearance, Paul's father gave a strange interview to the local paper. He said Paul had been talking a lot about the woods lately, that he was drawn to them. He kept saying he wanted to go into the forest, said he'd heard music, that the trees were calling. I thought it was just a boy's imagination, but now it felt like something else. He also revealed something no one expected. My wife had a dream the night before. Said Paul was standing in a clearing, just staring up at the sky. She said she felt cold when she woke up. They never talked about it again. When investigators began to plot the previous vanishings on a map, they noticed something bone-chilling. All 5 disappearances, including Paul's, formed a loose arc circling Glastory Mountain. All happened in autumn. All occurred between 3 p.m. and dusk. And none of the victims had been found except one, and she'd reappeared months later in a spot that had already been searched. This wasn't coincidence anymore. It was a zone, a perimeter. Some even started calling it a trap. Newspapers began speculating. Some said there was a mountain lion in the area, but no blood, drag marks, or shredded clothing were found. Others suggested a kidnapper, but Paul vanished too fast, in daylight, without a sound. Then came the stranger theories. A dimensional rift near the mountain, a place where reality thinned. A military test site with classified technology that could erase people. Or something older in intelligence inside the forest, watching, choosing. And some brought up an ancient legend. The Abenaki people once called the region near Glastory the place where the earth opens. No one asked what that meant. Weeks after the search ended, a group of hikers, college students from New Hampshire, camped in the same area near the dump where Paul disappeared. They didn't know about the story, but one of them, a girl named Sarah, later wrote a blog post about what happened that night. She described a sound in the trees just after midnight. Not an animal, not wind, but something that sounded like a low, repeating hum, almost like a distant engine or a voice trying to form words. She said it made her sick to her stomach. She woke up screaming, convinced there was a child's face outside her tent, just staring in. She left the next day and never went back. Paul Jepson was never found. No remains, no clothing, no answers. He was the youngest to disappear in the Bennington Triangle, and his case hit the hardest. Something about losing a child made the townsfolk finally stop pretending this was just bad luck. After Paul, parents stopped letting kids walk to school alone. Hikers stopped using the long trail in October. And the legend of Glastory Mountain, once a whisper, became a warning. Because the forest hadn't just taken another victim. It had taken a child. And now it had everyone's attention. After Paul vanished, the townsfolk were sure things couldn't get worse. But the forest wasn't done. Because just weeks later, a woman named Frida Langer slipped while hiking with her cousin and disappeared just yards from him. They searched every inch of that area. Nothing. But months later, her body was found in the exact same spot they had already searched over a dozen times. and no one could explain why her body was perfectly preserved. She slipped. That's all it was. A misstep during a short hike with her cousin. She said, "I'll be right back," and walked off to change her wet clothes. That was the last anyone saw of Frida Langer. For months, search teams scoured the area she disappeared in again and again. Nothing. Then 7 months later, her body appeared in that very same area. Out in the open. Like it had been placed there. And what they found was wrong. October 28, 1950. Just over 2 weeks after Paul Jepsen vanished. It was a crisp, sunny afternoon, the kind of day Vermonters say is too nice to stay indoors. Frida Langer, age 53, was hiking with her cousin Herbert Elsner near Glastonbury Mountain, close to the Somerset Reservoir. They were experienced hikers. This wasn't anything intense. Just a short, familiar trail. But near a small brook, Frida slipped and fell into the shallow water. Drenched, embarrassed, and laughing it off, she told Herbert, "I'll head back to the camp and change. Wait here, I'll be right back." He watched her disappear into the trees, heading for their campsite less than a mile away. She never returned. When an hour passed, Herbert got worried. He followed the trail back, expecting to find her changing clothes or warming up at the fire. She wasn't there. He searched the perimeter, called her name, checked the tent, even ran back to the trailhead. Nothing. He contacted authorities that same night. And by morning, over 100 people were combing the forest. The search for Frida was one of the largest in Vermont's history at the time. Helicopters circled overhead. Divers searched the reservoir. Bloodhounds were brought in. National Guard units joined the effort. They combed the area near the stream, the trail, and the campsite dozens of times. No tracks. No clothing. No trace. Her family was adamant Frida wouldn't run. She wasn't depressed. She didn't drink. And she loved those woods. She just disappeared. And then came winter. May 12, 1951. 7 months after Frida disappeared. 2 hikers were walking near the exact same area, the brook, the trail, the reservoir. It was the same place that had been searched endlessly. That's when they saw it. A body. Out in the open. Face up. Shoes still on. Jacket half-zipped. It was Frida Langer. What made this discovery so disturbing wasn't just that Frida had died. It was where she was found. The spot had been visited, searched, and even camped near multiple times during the search. There were no signs of disturbance around her. No blood. No drag marks. No animal activity. The scene looked like the body had been gently placed there. And perhaps even worse, her body was in strangely preserved condition despite being in the wilderness through a full Vermont winter. Officials said decomposition didn't match the timeline. One officer said off-record, "It looked like she'd only been dead a few days. Maybe even hours. But that can't be possible." An autopsy was performed. But due to the advanced decay of certain soft tissue and the inconsistent state of preservation, the cause of death could not be determined. There were no visible wounds. No broken bones. No signs of animal predation. No indication of drowning or exposure. It was like the forest had held her and then simply decided to give her back. Frida's return changed everything. It shattered the idea that these were just lost person cases. Because now there was a body. But instead of bringing closure, it only raised more questions. Where had she been for 7 months? How had no one found her? Why was she so well preserved? Who or what placed her there? Some started whispering new theories. A hidden cave system under Glastonbury? A hermit or serial killer using the mountain as a dumping ground? Or something not human, a force that takes and decides when to return? Herbert Elsner never forgave himself. He spoke to a reporter once, 5 years later. He said Frida looked over her shoulder before walking into the trees. That she hesitated. And that for a second it seemed like she heard something deeper in the woods. Something that pulled her attention. He said, "I told myself she slipped or wandered or fell. But deep down, I know she heard something I didn't." He moved to Pennsylvania the next year. Never hiked again. Let's pause and look at the facts again. By now, 5 disappearances in 5 years. 1. Mid-Eye Rivers, 1945, vanished while leading a group. 2. Paula Weldon, 1946, disappeared on Long Trail. 3. James Thetford, 1949, vanished from inside a moving bus. 4. Paul Jepsen, 1950, disappeared in seconds near a dump. 5. Frida Langer, 1950, slipped, disappeared, and reappeared months later. Every case? Same area. Same time of year. No signs of struggle. And in most cases, no remains. Frida was the only one to come back. And even her return was unnatural. No more disappearances have been officially reported in that zone since 1950. But that doesn't mean the forest stopped watching. People still hear voices in the woods, still see lights over the reservoir, still lose time on the long trail, entire hours missing from watches and phones. And some hikers say they've seen a woman in a muddy jacket standing near the brook where Frida fell, staring, waiting. 5 disappearances. 1 body. No answers. But what if this wasn't just a cursed patch of woods? What if there's a reason this land is wrong? In the next episode, we dig deep into the darkest legends of Glastory Mountain. Native curses, vanished towns, magnetic anomalies, and a sinister connection to strange disappearances across the U.S. What if the Bennington Triangle is just one node in a larger map? 5 people disappeared between 1945 and 1950 in the forests near Glastory Mountain. Only 1 body was ever found. But here's the part no one talks about. This mountain has always been wrong. Before the vanishings, before the Bennington Triangle had a name, people avoided it. Animals avoided it. The indigenous tribes wouldn't even live near it. They said the mountain was alive. And it hated us. Long before Vermont was mapped, the Abenaki and Algonquin-speaking Native American tribe lived throughout the region. But they avoided Glastory Mountain. They called it Otsahozo's cursed seat, loosely translated as the place where the earth opens up. Tribal elders told stories of strange sounds, of people vanishing, of animals refusing to enter certain glades. And most ominous of all, a stone that moves without sound, a place where no one walks twice. They considered the mountain bad medicine, spiritually toxic. Not evil exactly, but predatory. In the 1800s, the town of Glastory was formed at the base of the mountain, a small logging village connected by narrow rail lines. But over the years, tragedy and misfortune plagued the town. The logging industry collapsed. A flood wiped out the railroad in 1897. Multiple accidents and unsolved deaths occurred, and the entire area became uninhabitable. By 1930, Glastory was declared a ghost town. The state literally dissolved it. Today, it's officially unincorporated land. No mayor, no residents, no government oversight, just forest and silence. Here's something the hikers all agree on. Compasses don't work near the summit. Modern hikers report sudden magnetic interference, electronics glitching, even phones rebooting mid-recording. Old-school hikers from the 1950s said the needle spins, or worse, points in the wrong direction. One survivor from a near-miss in 1987, a story never widely reported, claimed, "My compass pulled me west. I followed it until I realized I was walking in circles. But the needle never moved." Geologists who've tested the region confirm unusual magnetic signatures near the peak. But they can't explain why. In 2003, a Vermont-based sound researcher named Eleanor Dorrance recorded what she called a subsonic hum near the Somerset Reservoir adjacent to the triangle. The hum was inaudible to the naked ear but detectable on recording equipment. The strangest part? The sound fluctuated with no source. It was stronger at twilight, and it caused some listeners to feel nauseous, disoriented, or anxious. A psychological study from UVM later linked prolonged exposure to low-frequency sounds in Glastory to visual hallucinations, time distortion, memory lapses, almost like the mountain was affecting perception. Now here's where things get even stranger. Between the 1930s and 1970s, other regions across North America reported similar clusters of disappearances. Smoky Mountains, TN, multiple children vanished from marked trails. Crater Lake, or hikers gone mid-step, never recovered. The Superstition Mountains, AZ, long rumored to eat gold miners and travelers. The Sierra Nevada Missing Zone, CA, eerily similar stories. People vanish in plain sight, scent trails vanish, electronics fail. Overlay these on a map and you'll notice. They form a loose spiral, with the Bennington Triangle almost dead center. What if these places aren't separate? What if they're connected? Buried in the archives of the Bennington Historical Society is an almost forgotten journal from Arthur Whittle, a surveyor who worked on the railroad near Glastory in the early 1900s. One passage reads, "Something in those woods don't want us here. I heard it last night. A breathing that wasn't wind. The trees, they move when you're not watching." Another entry just days before he quit his post. "Lost my crew chief. He walked ahead. Never came back. We found his lantern, still lit. He fled the project and never returned." His journal ends mid-sentence. Modern hikers, especially those documenting on YouTube or TikTok, report time slips. One user described walking the trail for 30 minutes and returning to camp to find 4 hours had passed. Another said her watch ticked backwards while she was walking alone. One of the most viral stories? A group of 4 hikers uploaded a clip where they say, "We left trail markers behind us. Orange tape. But when we looped back, they were gone. Then an hour later, we found one of our own tapes on a tree ahead of us. They swear they were walking forward the whole time." Here's the part they never put in official reports. Multiple hikers and even some of the original searchers told their families privately. They saw something in the woods. A shape. Tall, thin, pale, motionless. Always at the edge of sight. Never clearly visible. Some say it looked like a person. Others say it had no face. But everyone agrees on one thing. It didn't blink. And it didn't move until you looked away. So what is Glastonbury Mountain? A cursed patch of land? A geological anomaly? A doorway? Maybe it's all of those. Or maybe, as some researchers have proposed, the mountain is alive. Not metaphorically. Literally. An ancient, sentient ecosystem that defends itself. One that removes threats. Not with claws. Not with violence. But with silence. With misdirection. With time loss. With fear. It doesn't kill you. It unmakes you. Today, hikers still go into the Bennington Triangle. Some to prove it's all myth. Some because they've heard the whispers. And a few, a growing number, go into disappear. They say things like, "I want to see what they saw. I want to find the red coat. I don't belong here. Maybe I belong there." But none of them ever return with answers. Just stories. And sometimes they don't return at all. In 2013, a survivalist posted a cryptic blog entry claiming to have escaped the Bennington Triangle after being lost for 9 days. He said the forest rearranged itself. That it watched him. That he wasn't alone. And that the people who vanished? He saw them. Still alive. But they didn't recognize him anymore. In 2013, a man went missing for 9 days near Glastonbury Mountain. He was found, alive. What he said after that was buried, deleted, dismissed, and written off as delirium. But he left behind a journal. And in it, he claimed the forest changed, watched him, and showed him people who should have been dead. This is the story of the man who escaped the Bennington Triangle and what he saw inside. October 2013. A 37-year-old solo hiker named Kyle Murdoch, ex-military, wilderness survivalist, blogger, sets out for a 3-day camping trip near Glastonbury Mountain. He posts one last entry before going offline. Heading out alone. Going to see if the legends are real. Compass, GPS, drone, GoPro, journal. If I don't post by Sunday, send help. His followers assume it's a joke. Until Sunday comes and goes. Kyle is found 9 days later, wandering a gravel road near Woodford Hollow. Disoriented, barefoot, covered in scrapes. He won't speak at first, just keeps repeating. "It turned on me. The forest turned on me." Local authorities bring him to the hospital. No major injuries. Mild dehydration. Early-stage hypothermia. But nothing that should have kept him off the grid for 9 days. Especially for a trained survivalist. 2 weeks later, a cryptic blog post appears on his now private website. Titled, "Day 3, the loop begins." It's the first of several posts, most written in a scattered, urgent tone. Some appear unfinished. Others are entire pages of single-sentence paragraphs. Many were later deleted, but a few were archived by fans. They reveal a terrifying account of being lost in a place that wouldn't let him leave. From Kyle's entries. Day 1 was fine. Camped near the ridge. Beautiful sunrise. Day 2, compass spun during the hike back. Thought it was busted. GPS wouldn't sync. Day 3, followed my markers. Hit the same stream I'd crossed hours before. No way. I marked the tree. Same mark, same rock. I walked in a straight line for 2 hours. Ended up at my own camp. The fire was cold, but I swear it was burning when I left. Night 4. Something outside the tent. I thought it was a deer until it whispered my name. My full name. Not just Kyle. It said Kyle Murdoch. Over and over. In a voice that wasn't mine. He didn't sleep after that. He began moving at night, breaking his own survival rules. Desperate to get away from the voice. But every direction led him back to the same place. There's a stone with a split down the middle. Looks like an eye. I passed it 3 times. I marked it. And I passed it again. Day 6. I saw someone. Red coat. Blonde hair. Thought it was a searcher. But when I called out, she didn't turn around. She just walked into the trees. I ran after her. Lost sight of her. Then I saw another figure. Older man, gray hair, tan coat, holding a rifle. I yelled again. Nothing. And then it hit me. Red coat, like the girl. Rifle, like the old guide. I saw the ones who disappeared. Kyle claims he watched them walk aimlessly without expression. As if in a trance. They didn't see me. Or maybe they weren't supposed to. By day 7, Kyle stopped eating. He was hallucinating or something was pushing visions into his head. The trees whispered in a voice that sounded like my father. I heard a baby crying. My GPS flashed coordinates, numbers I didn't recognize. He smashed the device against a tree. The next night, he woke up with his own voice whispering in his ear. Let it in. He doesn't remember what happened after that. Day 9, he followed a light in the trees. It wasn't a search party, no noise, no helicopters. Just a dull bluish glow. It flickered like a flame. But no heat, no smoke. I followed it without thinking. And then, I was on a road. He was found shortly after, walking barefoot, eyes bloodshot. The last line of his final journal entry? I left. But not all of me did. Kyle deleted his blog 2 weeks later. Friends say he moved to Arizona under a new name. He never returned to the woods. Never gave interviews. But one anonymous poster, possibly him, left this chilling message on a survivalist forum. There's something inside Glastonbury. It doesn't kill you. It changes you. And if you're lucky, you forget. Skeptics say it was a psychotic break. Sleep deprivation. Exposure. Hallucination. But one detail stands out. When investigators searched the area Kyle mapped, they found a compass buried in moss, cracked in half. It wasn't his. And nearby, they found something else. A small red button. Old. Faded. From a coat. A model from the 1940s. Kyle Murdoch escaped the triangle. But others never did. Or they chose not to. In the next episode, we uncover a secret community that claims to live off-grid inside the forest, descendants of those who went missing and now want nothing to do with the outside world. Locals call them the Hollow Men, and if you try to find them, they find you first. They live in the trees. No names. No faces. No voices. Locals call them the Hollow Men. No one knows who they are, only that if you see them, you've crossed a line you weren't meant to. In 1997, hiker Dan Bellamy vanished for 3 days on Glastonbury Mountain. He was found stumbling down a fire road, dehydrated and in shock, muttering. They were watching. No faces. No eyes. Authorities dismissed it as wilderness psychosis. But Dan later released a sketch, a hand-drawn map of a trail not found on any official registry. It curved deep into the northeast quadrant of the mountain, past the long trail, and ended in a ring marked only as. They live here. The map was ignored until hikers tried to follow it. And one by one, they came back different or didn't come back at all. Over the next 2 decades, reports trickled in. Faint drum-like noises deep in the forest. The smell of burning pine, despite no fires. Flickers of movement far from known trails. And most disturbing, sightings of figures standing perfectly still, shoulder to shoulder, watching silently from tree lines. Some hikers described them as draped in rags. Others said they were completely nude, pale, and hairless. All agreed on one thing. They had no faces. Not blurred, not hidden, but blank. Like wax dolls left in the sun. Next, in 2011, a YouTuber and solo hiker known as Wendigo Trails uploaded a now-deleted video titled, "Found a secret camp in the Bennington Triangle, not a joke." The video, shot on a shaky handheld camera, showed a circle of hand-built wooden huts deep in the forest. Bones scattered outside the perimeter, possibly deer, but bleached and arranged in patterns. A series of crude figures made of sticks hanging from trees. Some upside down. Some with hollowed-out seed pods for heads. And scratched into one of the wooden beams. Stay in the light. The video was removed 48 hours after upload. His channel went dark. The last message posted to his feed simply read, "Not coming back." In 2015, a former Vermont state trooper anonymously emailed a local journalist, claiming he'd been part of an off-record search party for a missing backpacker in the Triangle in 2004. He said they stumbled upon what looked like an abandoned shelter, overgrown with moss and buried beneath a rise of stone. Inside, they found bedding made of matted animal fur, hand-carved bowls, and a journal, written in a strange mix of Latin, broken English, and symbols that didn't match any known alphabet. On one of the pages was a single phrase scratched in with charcoal. "We are the ones who stay when the doors close." The shelter was burned the next morning. He was told never to speak about it again. Theories about the Hollow Men are endless. Survivors of past disappearances now living feral in the woods, disconnected from time. Off-grid cultists, descendants of early Glastonbury settlers who rejected modern society and embraced something ancient. Manifestations, not people at all, but the forest itself shaped into watchers. Hollow forms to keep intruders out. But the most disturbing theory? That the Hollow Men were never human. Not in any recognizable sense. Not spirits. Not monsters. But place-bound sentience wearing human shapes like a disguise. Act 6, The Search Party Recording. In 2019, an anonymous Reddit post claimed to have audio from a private SAR team, search and rescue, operating unofficially in the Triangle. The file, still floating around on obscure forums, includes faint voices, breathing, and at the 22:04 mark. Soft static crackling, then silence, then a slow, rhythmic knock, knock, knock. Then, a whispered voice. It's behind the trees. Don't look. Don't. Screaming, static, abrupt end. The coordinates listed in the metadata match the ridgeline north of Glastonbury Summit, near the area Dan Bellamy drew on his map. No names. No follow-up. And the Reddit account? Deleted the next day. Act 7, The Pattern Returns. When the disappearances from 1945 to 1950 were mapped and overlaid with modern Hollow Men sightings, a chilling pattern emerged. The camp from Wendigo Trails? Exactly halfway between where Paul Jepson's scent disappeared and where Frida Langer's body was found. A perfect triangle. At the center of that triangle? An unmarked ravine. Locals call it the Hollow. No trail leads to it. GPS signals die near the edge. Animals don't go in. Neither do people, at least not those who want to come back. Act 8, A Missing Hiker's Last Words. In 2022, a hiker named Sam Keating vanished while solo camping just outside the Hollow. 3 days later, his emergency beacon pinged from inside the Triangle, a place miles from where he was expected. When searchers arrived, they found his camp undisturbed, but Sam was gone. In his phone's notes app was a single saved draft, timestamped at 3:11 a.m. They're not ghosts. They're echoes of what we leave behind when we lose ourselves. Hollow doesn't mean empty. It means waiting. The idea of the Hollow Men terrifies in a different way. They aren't monsters with teeth. They don't chase you. They watch. From a distance. From the tree line. From the corners of your vision when you think you're alone. And if you follow the wrong trail, if you step just far enough off the map, they see you. And once they do, you don't just disappear, one old hunter once said. You unravel. Locals still whisper about them. Hikers who walk the long trail at twilight say they feel a shift in the trees. The breeze changes. The woods go quiet. And sometimes they catch a shape not moving. Not breathing. Just standing. And they walk a little faster. But the truth is simple. If you're in the Bennington Triangle, you were never really alone. The Hollow Men might be the watchers. But who or what do they answer to? In the next episode, we examine the final and most chilling layer. Ancient maps that predate the town of Glastonbury. A missing military experiment in the 1960s. And a growing theory that the Bennington Triangle is not a haunted forest, but a gate. In 1963, a military mapping team entered the woods near Glastonbury Mountain. They were never officially logged. They were never officially retrieved. What they found was buried in redacted files, erased transcripts, and lost radio recordings. But pieces of their story leaked. And what they describe isn't just a place. It's a threshold. This is the story of the Glastonbury expedition and the gate beneath the mountain. The records come from a 1974 FOIA Freedom of Information Act request, partially declassified in the 1990s, then buried again. In it, an unnamed U.S. Geological Survey team operating under the Department of Defense was sent to Glastonbury in the summer of 1963. Their purpose? To investigate magnetic anomalies interfering with military radio frequencies across southern Vermont. 6 men entered the woods. They were expected to be gone 3 days. Only one returned. His name was redacted from all public documents. But whistleblower notes refer to him as Agent W. He was found near Woodford, disoriented, barefoot, and unable to speak for 11 days. When he recovered, he gave a statement which was later suppressed. Here's a fragment recovered from an intercepted scan in 2002. There's a pressure, like being underwater but dry. The air folds. The compass cracked in my hand. The others walked toward it. We thought it was stone, but it moved. One by one, they went in. I didn't. I ran. I think I ran. He was discharged with neurological damage and exposure psychosis. He never spoke publicly again. In 2013, a researcher from Vermont Technical College discovered a 17th-century French map in a museum archive in Montreal. It showed a vague outline of New England with a charcoal black circle drawn near the region we now call Glastonbury. Next to it, a word in Old French, la bouche. Translation, the mouth. Some believe this was the first recorded warning that the land was not safe. Others think it was a label, not for a place, but for a function. A mouth not of a creature, but of the earth itself. Here's where it goes deep. Multiple independent researchers have proposed that Glastonbury Mountain and the Bennington Triangle as a whole is not just geologically unique. It's spatially unstable. Some call it a thin place, a zone where magnetic fields invert, time dilates, spatial consistency fails. A 1986 study, never published, by UMass physicist Dr. Peter H. Arland theorized. These regions may act like valves, brief, natural ruptures in our dimensional consistency. When they open, they don't destroy matter, they remove it. He died before his paper was peer-reviewed. The draft was found in his study pages torn, one line underlined twice. It doesn't let everything back. So what is the gate? Old folklore calls it the root mouth, a hole beneath the mountain that leads not downward, but sideways. Not a portal in the sci-fi sense. Not a wormhole, but a natural collapse of dimensional separation. When it opens, even for a moment, people slip. Not into hell. Not into heaven. Just out. Let's go back to the disappearances. Mid-Eye River's last seen near a sharp bend in the trail, a common vortex site. Paula Weldon vanished at 4 p.m., the most common time of day for magnetic flux in the region. James Tetford disappeared inside a moving bus without anyone noticing, as if erased. Paul Jepson sent trail ended mid-forest with no terrain explanation. Frida Langer returned months later in an area previously searched as if placed. It's not just mystery. It's geometry. Each vanishing formed a circle, each point tracing the edges of something hidden beneath. Something vast and awake. In 2020, a hacker leaked a fragment of an audio recording allegedly captured from a USGS field recorder in 1963, the day the Glastonbury team vanished. This is what's heard. Wind. Static. Breathing. Voice 1, are you seeing this? Voice 2, no light source. Still glows. Crackling static. High-pitched hum. Voice 1, wait. Where's it? Voice 3, distorted, low, we don't belong here. Screaming. Radio cuts. The file ends there. Location data confirmed. Glastonbury Mountain, Northeast Ridge. You might think the disappearances stopped. They didn't. They just changed. Since 2000. Hikers report missing time. Drone footage glitches over the summit. GPS trails loop impossibly. People wake up outside their tents with no memory of walking. One woman woke up 11 miles from camp, feet clean, no injuries. And in all cases, the same phrase whispered again and again. I thought I was alone, but I wasn't. In 1951, just after the last confirmed disappearance, a local woodsman placed a sign at the trailhead, handwritten in red paint. It was removed by the Forest Service within days. But photographs survive. It read, "Do not stay after dark. Do not walk alone. If you see the same tree twice, run. The ground here is not true. This is where things fall through." So here's the truth. Glastonbury Mountain isn't cursed. It isn't haunted. It isn't even evil, not in the way we understand. It's a system, a living, breathing fold in the world. It takes, it waits, and sometimes it lets something back out. Not a person, not whole, but a whisper, a shape, a hollow version of something we once knew. Now you know the legends, the vanishings, the hollow men, the gate. But there's one last story to tell. A woman who returned. 50 years after she disappeared. No aging, no injuries, just silence. And when she finally spoke, she said only one thing. It's not done yet. She disappeared in 1972. A 19-year-old hiker, last seen near Glastonbury Mountain. No trace, no body, nothing, until 2022. 50 years later, she was found, alive, and completely unchanged. This is the story of Marla Linscott, the woman who returned, and the terrifying message she carried back from the Bennington Triangle. On August 4, 1972, Marla Linscott, a student from Albany, New York, took a solo weekend hiking trip in Vermont. She was last seen by a gas station clerk near Bennington. She mentioned she was headed to Glastonbury Mountain. She never returned. A 3-day search followed. Her car was found locked at a trailhead. Her backpack inside. Journal on the seat. The last entry read, "Trees are whispering again. I think they know I'm here." She was officially declared dead 7 years later. On November 3, 2022, just after 6 p.m., police received a 911 call from a motorist traveling a quiet road near Woodford Hollow. The driver reported seeing a woman walking barefoot down the shoulder. She looked wrong, pale, dazed, wearing old clothes. The woman refused to speak. She was taken to the hospital for evaluation. She had no ID, no phone, and no injuries, not even calluses on her feet. Just a name stitched into her backpack. Marla L. Authorities ran fingerprints. No matches. They submitted DNA to a genealogy database. 1 week later, a match was found with a living niece of Marla Linscott who had uploaded her family's tree in 2019. The results were impossible to dispute. The woman was Marla, biologically aged 19, exactly as she was the day she vanished. Doctors found no signs of malnutrition, no trauma, zero aging. It was as if time had stopped for her. Marla refused to speak for the first 47 days. She showed no memory of the modern world, no reaction to smartphones, cars, even electricity. She didn't flinch when shown news footage from 9/11, didn't understand what internet meant, asked why people weren't using typewriters anymore. But she wasn't in shock. She was calm, still, watching. And then she spoke. In a secure psych facility in Montpelier, a nurse asked Marla if she remembered where she'd been. She looked up, smiled faintly, and said, "Underneath." She refused to elaborate, but slowly over the next few weeks she said more. "The trees are older than time. You think you're walking straight, but you're not. They don't eat. They don't sleep. They just wait. There's something under the mountain, and it's still hungry. The hollow men are just messengers. What comes after them doesn't wear faces." When asked if she'd seen other missing hikers, she nodded once, then whispered, "They don't remember being people." Marla began to draw. Her art was collected by the FBI, then leaked online in early 2023. Dozens of repeating symbols arranged in spirals, trees, and eyes. Drawings of faceless people in circles. A massive figure beneath the mountain, a black shape with roots for limbs, mouth open, swallowing stars. On one page, in the corner, she wrote, "I was chosen, but I walked away before it opened all the way. The next one won't be allowed to leave." On February 13, 2023, hikers near Glastonbury reported pulsing blue lights coming from the summit. Their phones failed. One hiker filmed 10 seconds of footage before her battery drained. It shows a swirl of fog forming a ring, 5 figures standing still at the edges, a flash, and the trees appearing to bend outward as if pushed from below. They fled. One suffered a seizure. The others refused to speak on camera. One left a single post online. The gate opened. Just for a second, something looked out. On April 1, 2023, after 148 days in care, Marla Linscott disappeared from a locked medical ward. Security footage glitched between 2:03 a.m. and 2:09 a.m. Her room was empty, but her bed was neatly made. Her final drawing was pinned to the wall. It showed the Bennington Triangle, the 5 disappearances, the hollow men, the gate beneath the mountain, and beneath it in thick black ink. It's not done yet. The forest doesn't forget. And next time, it's not taking one. It's taking everything. Asterisk asterisk. Act 9, the loop begins again. Since her second disappearance, 3 more hikers have vanished from the Glastonbury region. One was a documentary filmmaker working on a series called The Truth About the Bennington Triangle. His footage was recovered. The final shot? A frame by frame of a figure in the trees. Not moving. Not blinking. And behind it, 5 shadows, evenly spaced, closing in. The story of the Bennington Triangle isn't just about people going missing. It's about something watching. Something ancient. A system. A memory. A trap. One that waits until we forget. Then opens again. And each time, it learns a little more. Each time, it takes a little more. And the next time it opens, we may not even know we're gone. Missing 411. Lost hikers. Urban legends. But what if none of them were lost? What if they were taken by something built into the very bones of the world? Something that feeds on the forgotten and grows stronger every time you say it isn't real. The Bennington Triangle. It's not a place. It's a decision. And some people don't get to choose.